across upon her bedroom wall. In her mind, ran between her thighs.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the video. Just a quick note before we start, you may notice I am on my landing, which is where I used to make my videos quite some time ago. The reason I'm not in my room is because recently my standard lamp, which was essentially my only source of professional lighting, broke. Therefore, I have to return to my landing, which is somewhere that actually has pretty decent light work for the kind of content I create. So, here we go. Finally, the Peter Steele breakdown. This is a re-record, by the way. The original footage is on my old hard drive, so I've decided to just remake the video, hence the delay. Let's not make that delay worse and get into it. Peter Steele was born Peter... I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name. In 1962 in Red Hook, New York. His father was of Polish and Russian descent, and his mother was of Irish, Norwegian, and Icelandic ancestry. Quite an interesting mix there. Peter was the youngest of 6 children, having 5 older sisters to grow up with. Steele's father served in the Second World War and later worked in a shipyard. It's rumoured that Peter first picked up a guitar around 12 years of age, and he began taking lessons before moving on to bass roughly 6 months later. Although Steele was naturally left-handed, Peter actually favoured using a right-handed bass for most of his career. And apparently this came about in one of his earliest bands named Aggression, which also featured later Type O Negative keyboard player Josh Silver, when they threatened to kick him out of the band, unless he switched from playing left-handed rhythm guitar to bass guitar. Due to left-handed bass guitars being so expensive at the time, Steele chose to buy himself a right-handed and learn how to play that way. Peter Steele actually worked for the New York Department of Parks and Recreation right up until he began touring with Type O Negative in 1994. He's actually quoted on many times as having said that it was some of the happiest years of his life. This is a footnote almost not worth putting in the video, but it's very well known that Peter Steele actually suffered from extreme stage fright. He also had random bouts of depression and even suffered from extreme paranoia, and he is quoted as having used and abused both alcohol and drugs to try and cope with this problem. At the age of 35, Peter Steele made the decision to get clean. He entered a program of rehabilitation and later, in fact, served a 30-day prison sentence for physically assaulting a love rival. Afterwards, Steele made light of his incarceration by actually wearing prisoner fatigues on stage with Type O Negative, turning it into their band costume as sort of a way to say, yeah, I was in prison, you know, that sort of thing. He made light of the situation in doing so. Unfortunately, on April 14th, 2010, Peter Steele died from sepsis due to complications caused by diverticulitis, which was initially reported as heart failure. After his passing, at the age of 48, the remaining members of Type O Negative decided to dissolve the band rather than try to continue without Peter. Peter Steele is fondly remembered by thousands of members of the metal community, one of which is Doro Pesch, also known as the Queen of Heavy Metal, and one of the reasons why I've decided to dedicate this singer breakdown to Peter Steele himself. Originally I was going to make this video as just the next person in my long list of people to break down the vocals of, but after my production of this video got set back so far, the anniversary of his death, April the 14th, actually passed by me, the 11th anniversary, and I noticed on Instagram that Doro Pesch was posting pictures of herself with Steele before he died in tribute to him, so I decided, you know, since the production has now overrun, that this video is my tribute to the great man himself, the gentle green giant, whatever you want to call him. Peter Steele was a wonderful man who had a lot of demons and brilliant musician who really cared about what he made, and he was also quoted as saying that music for him was sonic therapy, especially heavy metal, and he was a massive fan of Geezer Butler as well from Black Sabbath. Here it is, my breakdown of Peter Steele. Rest in peace, and I hope you guys enjoy.
Range. As always, for those of you who've been led astray by YouTube comment sections, range does not mean high. Range refers to the distance somebody can cover musically on the piano. Peter is quoted as having a range from a bass D1 in the typo negative cover of Black Sabbath to a G5 in one of my favourite typo negative songs, Zero Tolerance. This gives Peter a range of 4.4 octaves, which I believe is the greatest range I've ever covered on my channel. This also once again supports my theory that people born with lower voices tend to have more potential when it comes to vocal range. My personal musings aside, this range is phenomenal. It's absolutely crazy. In fact, most people seem to think that you need more range than you actually do to be a successful singer, but vocal range isn't everything. And Peter Steele, although he has such an incredible one, has far more to offer than just his insane range. Tone. Perhaps the only thing that Peter Steele is more famous for than his vocal range is his vocal tone. Though capable of reaching some of the lower notes in the bass register, something akin to that of a basso profundo, Peter Steele is more, in my opinion, what many might refer to as a basso cantante, that is, a singing bass. All basso cantante really means is that he is a bass just like any other, but with a more light and emotional vocal flavour. If we step outside his modal singing register for a moment and talk about his screams, Peter's tone becomes very growly and aggressive. Yet he never actually loses his control or his tonality at all. One great example being the extremely long scream from Black No. 1, which he actually elongated for live performances. All in all, if I had to sum up Peter Steele's tone in one word, I would say brooding. Though I think that actually has more to do with his goth metal shtick than anything else. His sound is deep, yet also emotional, and you really get a sense of what the man is all about, just through his singing. Pete Steele's tone is one that will make even the most self-respecting goth or metal singer feel jealous. Technique. What's interesting about Peter Steele is that whilst his technique is pretty solid, it doesn't actually seem to have any kind of inspiration or training behind it. Unfortunately, this is where my knowledge on the great man hits a bit of a brick wall, as I don't know whether or not he had any vocal training whatsoever, and I can't seem to find much online on the subject at all. Going entirely based off of what we can see in Peter Steele's performances, he has an incredible control over his voice. He can sing in a brooding, emotional manner, or he can scream as loud as Rob Halford himself. Whatever the story behind Peter Steele's technique is, it is a technique to be admired. Something else I notice about Peter Steele is that he uses letter rolling a lot, such as a rolling of the R's, which I assume comes from growing up in a household of Slavic descent. Or maybe it's just something he does to appear even more vampiric. Whatever the case, Peter Steele has a great control of how he enunciates when he sings, and once again, as I've said before, he is enough to make any self-respecting vocalist feel a little bit jealous, and his technique is no exception to that rule. Longevity. Now, unfortunately, this is a bit of a sensitive one when it comes to Peter Steele, as he didn't really have long enough of a career to start suffering vocal degradation due to age or drug abuse. There was a little bit of a lull just after he got out of prison, but unfortunately there's not much footage of that, and even blackout drunk playing live at Wacken 2007, he still managed to maintain a beautiful sound at some of his higher notes. Peter Steele's death was a tragedy, and I think it's one that the metal community will remember for many, many years to come. He was a very nice man with a lot of demons and an extremely talented musician. Though his vocal longevity never got its chance to shine, his longevity as an artist is undisputed. I just think it's a shame that it's always the funny and talented people that have to die young.
And there you have it. Thank you very much for watching this video, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about the constant delays. I work a hell of a lot, and this video has actually ended up being a lot longer than I originally intended. So we're just going to cut it off with a nice, clean outro. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you in the next single breakdown. Please consider liking and subscribing if you guys want to see more of my kind of content. Bit of comedy, bit of metal, bit of fun. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.